So I am back from Spain in my office that desperately needs to be cleaned up, but there we are. So today we are going to talk about summarizing data, starting with frequency tables. So by the end of this chapter, you will understand different types of data and have some appropriate methods of summarizing those different data types. Remember from the very beginning, there's nominal data, which is categorical, that includes dichotomous variables that could be either 0 or 1, and values that don't have any particular order, like chocolate, strawberry, banana, whatever. Ordinal, you have discrete values like first, second, third, and order matters. Interval, you have continuous variables, but they don't have a real zero value. And ratio, you have continuous variables with a zero value, like the number of days present. They could be there a half a day, a tenth of a day, 0 days. And these are key because you'll have problems in this course if you don't understand the different types of variables, particularly categorical variables versus interval or ratio. I often say in statistics courses, my goal as a professor is you will not look stupid, that you will not graduate and people will never say, who gave that person a master's degree? And one sure way to look dumb is to compute the mean of race or to report on the standard deviation of student ID, because that makes no sense. Now, if you're looking at these data and saying, are these nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio, even though student ID are numbers, they are still nominal variables. The person with the student ID number 6 is not any greater than the person with the student ID number 2. Nominal data, you can report in pie charts, bar charts, not really a histogram, nope. And not a line graph because it doesn't really make sense. But you could do a pie chart or a bar chart of nominal data. So we covered graphs last week. So let's talk about frequency distributions. And that's just the number or percentage in each category. Now get a frequency distribution in Excel is super duper duper easy. You select a variable, you click Analyze Data, and it gives you this pivot table report. That's it. It isn't as nicely formatted as this, but when I pasted into PowerPoint, it suggested this prettier table, and I just clicked yes. If you want to get percentages, relative frequency in Excel, you go into the cell next to wherever your count is, you put equals, you click on that cell with the count, you type a slash, you click the cell with the total, and you hit enter, and that will give you your percentage. And then you just do it again in the next cell. And we'll do a demo of that in a little bit. Or you could do a pivot table. So again, you select the variable, you select data, and then you select summarize with pivot table. You click the box next to the variable name like that. So when you pick summarize with pivot table, it'll come up with a sheet that has all this stuff. So I picked post. I click the box next to post. You drag the variable down under rows. You drag the variable under, so same variable, under values. And this will give you a table of the sum of the scores. See, it says right there, sum of post. That's not what you want, but you're almost there. So click this I next to post or whatever your variable name is. And in the box that pops up, there'll be a box that pops up, click count and click OK. And that's it. Now, if you wanted to get percent, drag your variable under values again, click the I next to sum, or whatever, sum of post, or whatever variable name is again. And in the box that pops up, click count. Yeah, so now it's there twice. But there's this other tab, you see it here, back up there, that says show data as. So this time I'm going to click that tab and pick percent of grand total. How about that? And it will give you the count and the percent of the total. So your options are select the variable, click Analyze Data, and then after that, enter the formula each cell, or you can do the pivot table. So when I look at this, I can see that on this second question, 95.1% of the 81 children, and that is 77, got it right. So frequency distributions can be a little useful. Now, if a dichotomous variable is coded 0 or 1, in which case it's also called a binary variable, you actually can get the mean, and it'll tell you what percent answered 1. So if 1 equals correct and 0 equals incorrect, the mean's the percentage you answered correctly. And you will see an example assignment that can be useful. I think it makes more sense to say 95% got it correct, but it's not wrong to say the mean was 0.951. Anyway, talk about means and modes in the next video. This is dumb. Do not do it. If a nominal variable is coded, for example, 1 equals 48, 2 equals cannonball, 3 equals porcupine, Excel or whatever statistical application will compute the mean, but you will just look clueless if you do that. If you say the mean of district is 2.7, it just makes no sense. And that's a mistake people make all the time because they'll see things that are coded as numeric variables and they'll think, oh, I'll just put in the average. No, don't do that. So we talked about nominal data. What about interval or ordinal data? Cumulative frequencies make sense for ordinal variables, but not for nominal ones. So I could say here that 30% of the students pass the test with a grade of C or higher. I know that adds up to 29%, but that's just because I didn't show the decimal places. You could see 70% got a D or an F, so 70% got a D or lower, 30% got a C or higher. Cumulative frequencies make sense if it's ordinal. If, again, if we were talking about back here, our nominal data, again, it wouldn't make sense to say 30% of the students were in Cannonball or higher. Ordinal data does make sense. Relative frequency in Excel, you can create a pivot table. For cumulative frequency, for the first cell, you enter the count for the lowest score. In the second cell, type equal, click the cell above that, plus the cell with the count for the second score, type a backslash in the total value, and then drag that all the way down. So that'll give you the cumulative frequency. For cumulative percent, type equals, click on the first value in the cumulative frequency column, type a slash in the total value, and hit enter, and then drag all the way down to fill that column. And again, we'll do a demo of that in a minute. Frequency tables are really useful for a couple of reasons. One is they help you understand your population. If you're doing a study of the effectiveness of educational games, which I do a lot, who are these people in your study? What is their gender? What is their age? What is their grade? What is their education? If you're doing research on teachers, and if teachers who have more than 3 years experience are more effective than teachers with less than 3 years experience, say, I'd also want to know, well, what level of education do they have? And maybe some other information about them. So it's great for letting you know about the background of people in your study who you can generalize to, and we'll get to that more when we talk about sampling. They have a lot of other uses, like item difficulty. I do a lot of things with testing, and you may notice that this current test, if you actually went and followed the link, you'll find that the latest test has 19 items in it. And the reason is that if no one gets an item correct, it's not very useful on discriminating between students. Basic test theory is not everyone's the same. So if everyone gets an item incorrect, or if everyone gets it correct, then it's not a good item for assessment of a trait, like mathematics achievement. Now, it could be useful for other things. If you have an item with very low difficulty, it still might be useful for letting you know that your class mastered a concept. So that's great. Or if you have an item with very high difficulty that almost nobody got it right, then that may show this is a concept you need to reteach. And I've been in classrooms observing teachers where they said that. They looked at test results and they said, okay, I know what I'm going to do on Monday. Only 40% of the students got this question right on percentages. That's what we're going to do. So that is a brief intro to frequency tables. And now we're going to dive into doing a little bit of demo of how to get these.